Alright, hey, what's up guys? Gratuitous from itsgratuitous.com. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about, does FL Studio work on a Mac? Before we get into it though, check out my free book if you want to learn FL Studio. It's called 5 Keys to a Successful Beat. Just go to itsgratuitous.com/5 keys, sign up, and I'll send you the book free. There's tons of valuable information and tips that I've left you inside of that free book. FL Studio is my favorite music program to make beats. It's the only music program I use, so don't listen to the other people out there if they say something about FL Studio in a negative way. It's awesome for making beats. So here is the current situation regarding Mac as of September 14th, 2021. Now in FL Studio version 20.8.4, ImageLine has now introduced what's called native support for the Apple Silicon CPU. We'll cover that in a second. So Apple implemented their own CPU chip into new models of computers. Previously, they used Intel-based CPUs. Now, the problem is that code written for Intel cannot run on Apple Silicon CPUs. So for example, your music program, if it was written for Intel, if your plugins were written for Intel, they cannot run on Apple Silicon unless your third-party VSTs update. Okay, so the developers need to, I guess, create like a different version of that plugin, like whether they port it over or have to modify a couple things. They have to update the VST to the Apple Silicon code. So FL Studio, as of 20.8.4, now allows native as well as compatible modes. So this is awesome. They thought ahead. They're preparing for you as Mac users. Now, the audio industry sometimes moves a little slow in certain areas. So when it comes to these third-party VSTs updating, you're going to have to research ahead of time. I know FabFilter did update to this. They were very quick to this. But for your third-party VSTs, you have to look into that. Okay, so just a quick recap, okay? So what happened was Apple decided to not use Intel CPUs anymore. They decided to create their own CPU, but the way how software runs on their CPU has to be written differently than when you write it for Intel. And so that is the problem that was going on. But again, as of FL Studio 20.8.4, they now allow native. So which means that into the future, FL Studio is ready for you. It may just be the third-party VSTs that you've acquired over time that need to update to this Apple Silicon CPU. And so that's it. For my reading and stuff like that, it sounds like FL Studio works great on a Mac in terms of performance. Again, you have to make sure you use VST versions of the plugin for cross-compatibility. Like for example, in Mac, you can't be using audio units, right? So, okay, so I just want to talk about why I like FL Studio for those of you who may be new looking at this stuff. So I recommend FL Studio because lifetime updates. No other music program offers you this. Okay, one-time payment, you're in. Now, the license, again, works both on Windows and Mac. So you buy one license, you have lifetime updates. In my opinion, FL Studio is amazing for making beats with MIDI, right? When we're using our third-party VSTs, our synthesizers, when we're clicking in our drum samples into a step sequencer, it's just such a fast workflow when it comes to MIDI. You put your notes in, you can adjust your notes in the piano roll, velocity, note nudging, very, very quick. For me, it's my favorite music program. It's the only music program I use and I recommend to my students. So the makers of FL Studio is a company called ImageLine. They are a great team. They're super responsive. They're on their forums all the time answering your questions as a customer. They ask about, do you want any updates? They actually implement these changes. I've had nothing but an awesome experience being a customer of ImageLine. Again, lifetime free updates. You pay once, you're in. Now, if you want to learn what version of FL Studio to buy, all you have to do is just go to itsgratuitous.com/buy FL Studio. Finally, if you guys want to learn FL Studio with me, you guys can check out my FL Studio Beginner's book, or I also have a membership. So just go to itsgratuitous.com and you guys will find all that information, all right? My goal is to help you learn how to make beats. So I hope this quick presentation broke down, does FL Studio work on a Mac? So now there's the Apple Silicon CPU as well as Intel on the previous models. FL Studio allows you to switch in between two modes. So Rosetta 2, which is the most compatible, which works with all your third-party VSTs because that code was written for Intel. But now if you want to switch to the Apple Silicon support, you would switch that inside of FL Studio. They explain that in their knowledge base, but you have to make sure that your VSTs are now written in Apple Silicon. All right, so if you like this video, you guys can subscribe when I release new videos. You can leave a comment below, I'll get back to you. And if you really want to reach out to me, you guys can send me an email at hi@itsgratuitous.com.